Hey there, Internet. My name's Luxander, and today we're going to be talking about ContraPoints tweets on Twitter about pronouns and they, them, and performative wokeness and the stuff. Usually this channel is not intended to be topical. It's not meant to be like, oh, let's talk about whatever the drama is right now, but I am having a very different reaction than a lot of other trans people to the posts that Natalie just put up on Twitter within the last day, I think it was, and I just want to talk about them and, sort of flesh out why I feel differently than other people, maybe. I don't know. If you're unfamiliar with what I am talking about, I am a little bit off-center in the frame because over here I'm going to be posting the tweet so you can read it, and I'm also going to be reading them aloud to discuss them. So Natalie quote tweeted someone else, and I will read the original tweet for you. Sometimes it's funny when you're the only trans person in a space where everyone is announcing their pronouns. Like, it gets to you and a hush falls over the room and you can just check your phone because only cis people need to be working on their pronouns game. That was the original tweet, I guess, that Natalie was responding to. She quote tweeted it and said, "This has happened to me before in hyperwoke spaces. Like, it's me and a bunch of cis women and we all have to go in a circle saying she, her because I'm there. There's this paradox where I can go to a sports bar in North Carolina and be miss and ma'amed all night, no question, but in self-consciously trans-inclusive spaces, I have to explain my pronouns and watch woke people awkwardly correct themselves every time they say you guys. I guess it's good for people who use they, them only and want gender-neutral language, but it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable transes like me, and that's super fucking hard for us." This is the initial tweet thread that has people upset with Natalie. And on this alone, I'm going to address this alone first. I don't understand why people see an issue with this, because it, to me, just seems like a person expressing a difficulty they have in navigating certain kinds of spaces. It seems pretty straightforwardly not a call to action. It strictly does not seem like a call to action to me, and I think that this is one of those situations where if you become high profile enough as a trans person, then everything you say is taken as a rallying vanguard, like you are trying to advocate some kind of change, when in reality, sometimes when you're trans, there are just things in life that are difficult for you that can't be easier, and sometimes that means there's a conflicting accessibility need. I would say that there are situations in which I, as a non-binary person, would really value people asking for pronouns or having that be part of the standard for how to introduce yourself. For example, if I were to attend a meeting for trans people and they go around the circle and everybody shares their name and their pronouns, I would find that really valuable, or a space that is trans aware like that. But there are also situations where I utilize the fact that people tend to assume your pronouns based on your appearance to sort of chameleon for me, to stealth as a trans male. I do, in many parts of my life, try to have people perceive me as masculine and male because I find it safer for people to either assume that I'm a cis man, or if they do categorize me as trans, then at least them thinking I'm a trans man is a little bit safer than being non-binary. It's just how I feel about how my life experience works. So in this situation, responding to these tweets, I can kind of see both sides of the issue, in that there are definitely times where if other people are going to introduce themselves with their name and their pronoun, I will probably take advantage of that in that space to be like, hey, my pronouns are they, them. I am non-binary. However, in situations where I am trying to be perceived as male and where I am doing everything in my power to be perceived as male, then if someone is confused about how to address me, I find that really deeply frustrating. And maybe it's because I feel like I'm putting a certain amount of effort in or whatever, but if I were binary trans, I would, in most cases, be trying to use the culturally understood signifiers to say, hey, I am male. Those are my pronouns. 2 years on testosterone didn't give me any facial hair. It's entirely possible that I just wouldn't ever have any, even if I was on T the rest of my life. I am a person who might never be fully passing, but in those situations where I am trying to pass, I would find it deeply, deeply irritating and frustrating if people are still confused, because I already feel that way. Because when I am doing everything I can to signal, I am male, I am a guy, I need you to perceive me this way, and people get confused and they look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, your voice doesn't sound like what I expected it to sound like coming out of your face. Like, that's deeply hurtful and shitty. I don't like it. It is very frustrating. So I understand where Contra is coming from, where Natalie is coming from. I don't like calling her by her channel name. I think it's weird. Her name is Natalie. And I also have another example to kind of draw from in that, like, the accessibility needs specifically. I have ADHD, and I have friends who have ADHD. Now, we have conflicting needs because, for me, if I am hanging out with one of my friends who has auditory processing disorder, they need the captions on when we're watching TV or when we're watching a movie. I, however, cannot do anything but read the screen if there are captions on. That is, like, my ADHD, like, focus is on the words, and it ruins the pacing of a lot of scenes, and it ruins the delivery of a lot of jokes. However, despite the fact that it's an inconvenience for me, and despite the fact that it's inconvenient because of my ADHD, that it's just a situation where my friend needs the captions, and I can't watch the movie with the captions. And most of the time, I just deal with that problem. It is a conflict between our accessibility needs, but it's possible for me to get over it and deal and just try to enjoy myself anyway. And I perceive this as a very similar situation from Natalie, especially because she specifically says, but it comes at the minor expense of semi-passable transes like me. She is saying, like, I don't have a good solution to this. It's an accessibility issue for me where it spikes my dysphoria. However, I perceive it as necessary. There is another Twitter thread that she posted in response to this one. I'll pull that one up as well. So she provided some clarity, and she said, y'all who are mad about this thread, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a norm of disclosing pronouns in trans-positive spaces, and I'm happy to give up having my gender assumed to help NB/non-passing trans people, but why can't I at least acknowledge this hurts more than helps me? She continues, not all trans people have the same needs, and some of the rules that trans people have taught woke cis people to follow lead me to be misgendered with they, and interrogated about my gender more often. Why can't I point that out? Can't a tran vent on twitter.com? I definitely see this as a situation where it's just a person expressing frustration at a conflict of need, a conflict of interest, and I don't think that she is saying, she explicitly says, I'm not saying we shouldn't have that norm of disclosing pronouns. However, I just feel the need to vent about this in this situation. I'm seeing this as fitting into a greater pattern where people consistently say that Natalie says stuff that's enbyphobic, that's you know, that could be construed as harmful to the non-binary community. And I've never perceived that, you know, like, I am non-binary, and I am very sensitive to seeing those things that are harmful to me as an individual and me and my community. I am aware of them. I see them when they happen, but it's never cropped up for me when I'm watching Natalie's videos. People will call out her video The Aesthetic as having problematic aspects to that. And when I watched The Aesthetic the first time, it kind of did hurt my feelings a little bit, but it hurt my feelings because she said something that was true that I didn't want necessarily, that I hadn't necessarily acknowledged in that way. When she was saying, doesn't it, when, you know, why did you freak out when that person called you sir? You know, because in that moment, it basically, like, the cis person had the power to cancel your gender. That's, like, that's how I feel every day. I felt like that was one of the most astute observations that you could make, because when you're non-binary, your gender is always canceled. Like, maybe that's why so many of us are so attached to our gender and our personal experience with it, and we try to surround ourselves with people who are going to support and acknowledge our gender, because cis people kind of have the power to take it away from you. And you know, they don't have the power to take away your internal knowledge of who you are, but they have the power to invalidate you. And effectively, like, if a if a cis person clocks me a certain way and goes and tells people, like, oh yeah, I met this girl or whatever, like, they have the power to then influence other people's perception of my gender. Like, it's a complicated issue, yeah, and there are difficult, painful things to grapple with, yeah, and maybe a binary trans woman isn't the person to address non-binary people's issues, sure, but I don't think that she's at any point been harmful to our community. I don't think she's ever said or done anything that is overtly like, non-binary people aren't real, and I'm a true scum, and I'm a trans med. In fact, her recent video where she took down the idea of trans trenders, like, that was a takedown of the idea of trans trenders. I loved that video. And her character, Baltimore, Maryland, her character where she plays a non-binary person, that is, like, one of the most well-spoken, articulate, like, insightful characters that she's ever written or played. I thought that character was like, you know, very calm, very poised and astute, and, like, that portrayal of a non-binary person is very normal seeming for as much as, you know, the glitter beard and the over extravagant ways that Natalie just does her film. You know, those things still led to a person who was calm and rational and didn't get emotional or screech. Like, that portrayal of a fictional non-binary person who is making arguments in favor of non-binary identities, that was so well put, and I think that you would have to be deliberately trying to see her as phobic towards non-binary people in order to ignore how astute the writing was for that character and how well she performed the character, especially contrasted against a character who is being actively mean to this, you know, fictional non-binary person, Baltimore. I'm not trying to say that it's not possible for any of the things that she's said or done to be construed as somewhat binary-centric, maybe, because, I mean, that's her experience, that's her life, that's what she's trying to make sense of with a lot of her writing. So, I'm not firmly saying she is this, she believes this, or she doesn't, because I can't do that. But I'm trying to say that I don't understand why people are trying to hold her to this standard that I don't think anybody could realistically fit. This is part of what has frustrated me so much for years, and is the reason that I don't have any friends anymore, is because when you affiliate yourself with the SJW types, and listen, that's not me degrading anybody, I identify as an SJW still, but I don't have any friends from that community really anymore, none that are close to me, because I am constantly worried about sharing an opinion about something that will get me effectively, like, torched in terms of, like, my social network. When you get to a certain point in your public life as a trans person, are you not allowed to have your own personal struggles and difficulties anymore? Like, is that what I'm perceiving from the response to this Twitter thread? It's just really frustrating, the idea that if you're in a progressive space, you can't exercise and flesh out your opinions, and in this case, you can't even flesh out your own frustration at something that is a genuine difficulty for you. It's making things easier for someone else, but it's making it more difficult for you, but you're not allowed to say anything anymore. You're not allowed to just have that personal moment. And I guess it's just like, well, don't post it on Twitter then. But that's, sometimes you just need to like get something out of your mouth or get something out of your head, like get the thought out. And sometimes it's, Twitter is a good place to do that. And it just feels to me like really unfair that a platform which should hypothetically be your personal platform is like community possession at a certain point. It's like anything you say has to be somehow beneficial to the community, or it's harmful actively. It's actively harmful, and you're enbyphobic because you have a conflicting accessibility need with regards to like how you navigate social spaces as a trans person. I just find it difficult to see what other people are seeing when I am in a position where I can see where she's coming from, and especially because Cat Black has commented on this as it's been ongoing, and Cat Black said this exact same thing a year or two ago when I've been following Cat Black on YouTube since before LeftTube was even a thing. She was one of the first trans people I started following on YouTube, and she has already talked about this exact thing, where she has already spent so much time getting people around her to perceive her as her gender. Like, she just is a woman. She just is a woman, and when you're in a space where you have to, when someone says they to her, that's not who she is. That is misgendering. That is degendering her. She is trying to use the language of cis society to communicate that she's a woman and you should call her she, her. And it's just a situation where it's less comfortable to be in a space where you need to explain your pronouns instead of like, oh, I've already learned how to use this passive language to communicate that to people, and now that it's a subject of conversation again, now I feel like my gender is being scrutinized again, and it hasn't been scrutinized in this way for a long enough time that it's uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with it. That's basically where Cat Black has come from with this. So maybe that's another reason why I'm having the thought process that I am about this, is because this is not a new idea for me. The idea that binary trans people have more scrutiny on their gender in a space where pronouns are asked for, it's not a new idea to me. Anyway, I'm sick. I've been going on about this for a while. I think I've made myself clear. If you have anything you want to add, definitely let me know in the comments. I will be checking as usual. I know I haven't been responding as much lately, but I'm dealing with a lot of busyness in my personal life, which I was going to talk about today, but then this all happened, so in maybe next week I'll tell you what's been going on with me and why I've been posting the videos late and stuff like that. But anyhow, that is going to be all from me today. If you like this video, please give me pretty analytics to look at and comments to read. Find me on Patreon to help me pay for my hormones. I don't have a job anymore. I'm a full-time student, so if you want to help me pay for medical stuff, please do that. Or you can hit me one time only on Patreon or on PayPal, link below. And then you can also subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications and tell me what else you want to see from me, because I can see the engagement going down. So that'll be it for me today, and I hope you have an okay day. Bye! Thank you as always to my patrons for supporting my rambling, especially The Gay Agenda, Amber Music, Jenny Swindles, Gretchen Becker, Wellington Marcus, Elizabeth Bartell, Pinesnake, Jess Sendrex, and Mr. Atheist. Y'all are amazing.